And hello once again, and welcome to the last proper episode of a Utopian project. Now, I do plan on having throughout sort of the entire series is going to be a comment in the description, in the comments, comment in the comments. Well done, as a question saying, if you have any further questions, please ask, and if you're listening to this, you can ask questions in the comments, and I'm thinking of doing a final video answering anything that I might have missed. So this video is kind of an attempt to look at things that I could have missed, sort of major things that I could have missed, and so this is the societal issues and how these societal issues could potentially be looked at in this kind of utopia, so it's a couple of different things. I'm going to be looking at discrimination, substance abuse, gentrification, the aging population / population growth / overpopulation, so basically population, trash, and sex work. I'm going to be looking at all these supposed societal issues and looking at what could be done about them in general in various ways. And also immediately just to say to anybody who hears sex work as being labeled as a societal issue, it is seen by many people as a societal issue, and that's why I'm going to be talking about it. But don't worry, this is definitely a pro-sex work space. This is not. I'm not going to be some kind of anti-sex work person. So, yeah. So, this series in general has been about looking at a possible utopian future, but what could be a utopian future, maybe. So let's look at a couple of these things. So we've spoken about how it could be communal, and I would recommend sort of watching all of them to sort of see, anything. Maybe if you see any potential problems, you can always say. Now, some issues would be things like, say, discrimination. Right now, in the real world, discrimination is a major issue. There's more than one type of discrimination. There's so many different types of discrimination, which are just lovely. Racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, speciesism, ageism. There's also ones which seem less intense but are still prevalent. Things like, say, heightism is a thing. So you get a lot of these, and it's not great, obviously. Now, many of the reasons for this is because of conservatives. We are raised, like, I remember when I was a kid, I went to grade 1 in 2001, and I finished high school in 2012. So, that was through the 2000s. And during that time, the word gay was definitely an insult. It didn't actually mean homosexual. It meant it wasn't cool. It was so gay. It was so gay. That was the thing people would say. And I know that I definitely said it too. As a young person, looking back, I regret that kind of behavior and language. But, I was a stupid kid. I've learned from my behaviors. But now the thing is, we're taught discrimination. We're taught it, and so we need to be not taught it. And the idea, which I spoke about in the education video, is that people need to, from a very, very young age, be effectively taught about what is right and what is wrong. And that is a very, very important thing that we need to work on as a society. We need to improve this kind of stuff. We can't be, that way. We just can't. It's a very bad thing. And now, obviously, in the society, it would be a completely multicultural society. There will be no kind of restrictions on immigration won't exist because countries won't exist. So you can't even get, like, xenophobia. And the idea that anybody could go anywhere and everybody should be accepted for who they are, because society will effectively work in a similar way kind of everywhere, and so there will be cultural differences, but the actual functioning of society should effectively be very similar everywhere, so that people can kind of integrate if they want to, sort of wherever. That's sort of a basic idea. So discrimination is something that needs to be taught against. So let me take myself as an example, because it's the easiest one. I'm from South Africa. I was born the year apartheid ended, the year Nelson Mandela was elected president, 1994. My birthday is 6 months. Yeah, April. 5 months. My birthday is 5 months after he was elected president. So I was born into an anti-apartheid and post-apartheid world, or South Africa. Now, that does not mean that racism didn't exist. I am white. I was raised by a white family. I heard a lot of racists in my family. I have heard my entire life how black people are stupid and how black people are incompetent and how black people are ruining the country and how black people are savages and blah, 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 all these kind of things. You hear it all the time, constantly and repetitively. And now, that is not something that goes away easily. Now, the thing is, I don't think that people should be judged on their thoughts. You should be judged on your actions. So, I was raised to believe these kinds of things. And so what happens is, with me, my brain might automatically think a racist thought. But because I have spent the rest of my life trying to not be racist, I automatically correct myself. You get a lot of people who try to, like people who are anti-racist, who will say, I've never had like a racist thought, never, ever. I don't really believe that. I not necessarily racism, there's lots of types of discrimination, but your instinctive thought is often one that you were taught. And the sign of somebody who's trying to improve is somebody who then combats themselves, right? If you think a racist thought, you need to question yourself, why did you think that thought? And then you don't express that thought, because once you express that thought, you put it into the world. So let's say, another thing, let's say with me, right? And this is like an example I always think about because it's such a weird example. I was raised pretty much by women. And like all the like heads of my family have all been women. Yet there are still sexist notions in my head. I was raised certain things like, so remember, for instance, when my sister got older, my sister's 10 years younger than me, when my sister got older, and she would speak much more candidly about things like, say, periods. And I believe that you should speak candidly about things like that because there's nothing wrong with having a period or anything like that. Obviously, it's a biological function. There's nothing wrong with it. But my mother would immediately go, no, just shut, he doesn't want to hear about that. I'm like, no, I don't care. I was a teacher. Like, I kept tampons for in case anyone needed one. Like, I am not afraid of periods. You shouldn't be. But I was raised in an environment in which it was never spoken about. Like, my mother never spoke about it when I was growing up. And then obviously I had a sister, so I never learnt about it that way. But then when I got older, I was never, like, disgusted by, you get a lot of men who are it's a very sad performative thing where they act disgusted about periods. It's pathetic, when men are like, I don't want to hear about it. It's pathetic. It's disgusting. It's sad, like, why are you such an insecure little man baby? But anyway, I was raised in this more essentially sexist, sort of misogynistic, like, not like my mother was a working woman from very, very young. I have always had immense respect for what women can do, and I've always kind of seen women as being, in a sense, superior to men, because I was raised by them, and the women don't have that kind of toxic masculinity nonsense going on, But I did still get it in society. And so I remember when I first watched, Full Metal Alchemist, random thing. So for those who don't know, it's a manga and anime. It's about it's like an adventure thing about these alchemists, but like alchemy is like kind of like a magic, but it's also like a science. The series is about like colonialism and religion and science, and it's about all sorts of things. And it's good. And then I found out that it was written by a woman, and my immediate thought, and I just thought to myself, that's strange. And as soon as I had that thought, I immediately thought to myself, wait, why is that strange? And I interrogated myself, and I said, why do you think it's strange that a woman could write like an adventure story with like male protagonists? Yeah, like why? That's silly. Like, why do you think like a woman can't write that? And it's true, because that's a very idiotic notion. Like, why couldn't a woman write Full Metal Alchemist? And I was very confused by myself, by my own thoughts. I was like, why did you think that? It's a ridiculous thing to think. Like, why? Why did you believe that? But that is what happens. So what happens is I was raised in a society that was, racist, sexist, whatever. And then I learned to be anti-racist and anti-sexist, and I tried to stop that, but I don't ever express those thoughts, because here's the thing. Say if I have kids one day, I'm not going to bring those things out with my kids, because if my kids can be raised in an anti-racist environment, then they won't have those same thoughts that I automatically have. Those terrible thoughts, and also really depends on the society. So for instance, a very weird thing about discrimination is how it's very specific to a place. So I grew up in an area with quite a lot of Muslim people. And when the big Islamophobia thing sort of happened in the wake of 9/11, I never understood it. Because I was like, but I know Muslims. Like, I have Muslims in my class. They're just regular, like, kids. I never saw anything weird about it. And I've also, to this day, I've never understood anti-Semitism. I don't get it. But also, I don't know any Jewish people. They just aren't really, like, I know people who are ethnically Jewish, but I don't know any, like, religious Jewish people. I know people who are like, oh yeah, no, my family is Jewish, but, like, I'm not a practicing Jew, my parents aren't, whatever. I've met, like, 2 people who've told me that they have Jewish ancestry, basically. I don't know any Jewish people. I just don't. There just aren't many Jewish people in South Africa, and I haven't interacted with really any, to my knowledge. But I've never understood the whole anti-Semitism thing. I don't get it. Like, maybe there's just not many Jewish people in South Africa, so it's not really as big a thing, but, like, I don't understand it. I don't understand anti-Semitism. It's weird. I can understand, like, anti-black racism because I grew up in South Africa, where apartheid, I get it. I get sexism. I don't understand anti-Semitism. And I also, I can, like, understand Islamophobia because, like, a different religion and all that kind of stuff, and it's been tied to, like, terrorism, but I personally never understood because I was like, no, but that's obviously religious maniacs who did that kind of thing. I mean, you get Christian maniacs too who do things like that. So to me, it was obvious, but I was raised around Muslims, and being just raised around people of a different faith will be, it stops you from being discriminatory. Like, it makes it a lot easier. But anyway, we're going to move on from discrimination. So discrimination is something that should be sort of trained out of you from a young age. Substance abuse. Okay, quite simple. I sort of believe in legalization of drugs. I believe that people are going to get drugs. People are going to get drugs. So I would rather people got drugs that were actually high quality and not from some random person. And then, of course, also have harm reduction methods in place. So places for people to go to do drugs. Because if you feel like you're not being judged for it, then you might actually seek help. When you try and force people, because the thing is, I'm terrified of drugs. That's because I was actually raised, my mother's second husband was a heroin addict. And I've been in and out of rehabs, seeing what they're like from an outsider's perspective. And it's not good. I'm terrified of drugs. But I understand why people take drugs. Life is difficult. Life is not very pleasant, And some drugs are considered completely fine. It's fine to drink alcohol. Yet it's like it's even like ingrained into a bunch of religions that like alcohol should be had. Yet heroin is such a terrible thing, And so I believe in harm reduction. I think there should be harm reduction things in place, and also complete legalization. You should be able to get these things, and then say you want heroin, so you'll go to a place and you would say I want to have heroin, and they would give you like a prescription for it, and also say, listen, if you feel like you need help, like if this is difficult, please tell us, whatever, we can sort of help you with these things. That is a preferable solution, because people are going to do drugs. They're just going to. You can't stop people from doing drugs. What you can do is because I was much more vehement before when I was younger, because I had very traumatic upbringing in terms of drugs, A lot of my stuff was stolen from me. I was put into places where it didn't feel safe. I was in and out of these rehab centers. I saw so many of them. It was scary. And I really kind of hated that man for a long time. I don't anymore, and I see him as a victim of drugs. But it's easy to see people who take drugs as being bad, but they're not. They deserve our sympathy and they deserve our help. And you're not going to help them by making it illegal, and you're not going to make it helpful by trying to stop them, because you need to, because essentially when it comes to any addiction, like you need to want to stop, right? You can't be forced into it. It doesn't work, you know. Also, just as a little aside, everybody sees Hollywood movies. Rehab centers don't look like that. Okay, they don't. Every time I see any rehab centers in movies, in series, and whatever, it's always these bougie places, which are just, that's not my experience. My experience of a rehab center, okay, a rehab center is a rundown house with a broken door where there's like 5 bunk beds pushed into a room. That is a rehab center. Not some bougie little place where you can go and chill by the pool and touch horses. Like, that is rich people rehab. Real people rehab is not very pleasant, and people shouldn't have to go through that. But anyway, let's move on to the next one, is gentrification. It won't exist. It just won't exist, because people will be allocated to homes. Homes are like, anyone can live anywhere. There's no kind of money orientation to it, so gentrification just can't happen. I just thought I'd put that in there as just an aside. Like, it can't be gentrification, because the idea of gentrification is that, like, white people basically move in. It's rich people, but mostly white people rich people who are mostly white people move into a poor area, and then they drive up the property values, and it forces out all the original residents, who are usually people of color. Now, there's no such thing as property values in the society, so no one's being forced out of their homes, so gentrification just doesn't exist. So, you know. Next one, the population. Okay. We have a fixation on population growth, because the capitalist society demands constant expansion. It requires more, like, endless numbers of workers. Now, I would say we should have robust, very, very robust birth control methods, so that people only have kids when they want to have kids. You know, I would say that automatically when people get to a certain age, they should be asked, listen, do you want to go on to birth control? Like, it doesn't have to be a thing where, because a lot of the time people, like, this is what happened with, like, girls, okay? Because girls are often taught that they're not supposed to be having sex, right? They're supposed to be virginal forever. And so it's scary to go to, like, a pharmacy and say, listen, I want the pill. It's scary. It's really scary. It would be a lot easier if people came to you, like, more so in an anonymous capacity, and said, do you want to be on the pill? Don't worry. Your parents won't be told about this, whatever. It's your decision, because it's your body. So do you want to be on the pill? Do you want to get any of the other kind of things? And also, there needs to be a ramping up of the technology to actually make proper birth control medication for men, because there just kind of isn't at the moment. Like, there are things being done, but, you know, I remember seeing a thing which is very interesting. There was a birth control pill for men that was, like, had some positive, trials and whatever, but the side effects were deemed to be too severe. And the side effects were almost like the same side effects as a female birth control pill. So we also need to be working on the female birth control pill to make it better. You know, we need to have better birth control just in general for people, because that's good. And also, of course, freely available abortion. Abortion should not be, like, anti-abortion people. First off, just as a quick aside about abortion, do not listen to conservatives who want to change terminology, because that's what conservatives do. They like to change terminology to make it seem as if left-wing people are the bad guys, right? Do not play their game, okay? Do not play their game. They are not pro-life. They are anti-abortion, okay? I also don't actually like the term pro-choice. You are pro-abortion, okay? Pro-abortion, anti-abortion. Okay, you can also say pro-woman's rights, anti-woman's rights. You can also say it like that. Okay, because the thing is, if you don't want to get an abortion, then don't get an abortion. No one will ever force you to get an... Oh, okay. I must just preface that by saying there is a long history of sort of eugenics practice on like indigenous peoples who have been forcibly sterilized. But I'm talking about, in this kind of society, there would be no forceful sterilization, obviously. It's your choice. And it has nothing to do with anybody else. It's your body. No one else's body. So if you have the whole, oh no, I don't think abortion should be done, like, yeah, it's wrong. you can think it's wrong. Then don't get an abortion when you have a kid. If you get pregnant, don't have an abortion. But you do not get to dictate the lives of other people's bodies. You do not. You do not get to say that they have to have a kid. No. But also, of course, I think people will probably be more likely to want to have kids in a society like this, because one of the reasons, for instance, that I'm terrified of having children is because I can't afford a child. And I do not want to have a child unless I can afford to send that child to a university that can give it a good life, that I can provide for the child properly. And if I can't do that, I do not want a child, because I do not want to bring a child into a world of suffering. I kind of do have some anti-natalist sentiments, because life is ultimately suffering, and I think bringing a child into the world is essentially a non-consensual activity. Nobody consents to being brought into the world, but that is a whole other issue. And also a lot of antinatalism can end up going into very eugenics-y areas. I'm not in that sense. Mine's more from like a Schopenhauer perspective, like life is suffering, and you're forcing a creature into a world of suffering. And yeah, that's also why I believe that people should rather adopt. There are so many kids that could do with homes. It's kind of selfish to want one that's a biological replica of you. But anyway, so population growth is a thing that you don't want the population to get too big, because we don't want to destroy nature. That's what becomes difficult. But we also can't restrict people like that. So we need to figure out some kind of a solution to this, because now, first off, there isn't overpopulation. Okay, it's not actually an issue. It's a eugenics-y thing, and it's kind of a racist thing to talk about overpopulation, because usually when you talk about overpopulation, you're not actually talking about white people. You're talking about those damn blacks who just breed and breed. That's who you're talking about when you talk about overpopulation. You're talking about like Africans who have lots of kids, and that is racist. It's racist. You are a racist. So it becomes difficult, but the thing is, I wouldn't really say these are issues, because if people are just provided for and then given good educations, good and proper birth control and everything, there just won't be this explosion of kids who just suffer. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about population. Now, trash is difficult, obviously. Now, as much as possible, we want to... I've spoken about before how we have too much food waste in our society. And food waste is a big issue, and don't want to have food waste. But we also have other trash issues. So we want to massively reduce plastic, for instance. And obviously we already know things about, like, we want to reduce emissions and stuff like that. But when it comes to trash is a very complicated issue. You do get some possible solutions, like you do get things like eco-bricks, which is a potential solution where you can repurpose trash into building materials. That's a possible kind of more elegant solution, actually, because we're going to create trash no matter what. And like, I don't really know where to put trash, and you also don't want to burn trash, and you don't want to put trash in the ocean, or you don't want to just dig a big hole and throw it in a hole. These are not really solutions to the trash issue. Also, you don't want to shoot trash into space. That is a very dumb idea. So trash is a hard problem. Eco-bricks, might be a solution, potentially, to the trash issue. But plastic, you can't just get rid of plastic completely, because plastic has some very important uses. For instance, medicine. You need single-use plastics for medicine, because things have to be very sterilized. And those things usually have to be burned afterwards. So, like, I understand those, but it becomes a difficult situation. It's very difficult. But I think if plastic was pretty much only in medicine, I think we could deal with it. Like, that's not too bad. Hopefully. Hopefully. But if, for instance, right, things are delivered to the public eatery, right, where the communal eatery, people go, you don't need to have plastics, because it can be delivered directly, and it doesn't have to go to people's homes. It just stays at the eatery. It stays like there, and it's made there, and it's then handed out without plastic. So plastic can just be massively reduced in that kind of capacity, and with also a reduction in sort of imports and exports, like we've spoken about in the which video was it? The 10th video spoke about that. That would also help. But we want to reduce plastic as much as possible and reduce trash in general. say food, any kind of food waste should be kind of repurposed as some kind of mulching stuff. You can use it to make fertilizer, sort of non-nitrogen based fertilizer, non-artificial fertilizer, so much more organic fertilizer. Also, speaking of something organic, there's 3 dogs in this room, and one of them farted, and it's a very stinky one. This is the second time they've done this to me today. So, I'm furious. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about is sex work. Now, sex work is a difficult thing, because sex work is work in the current society. But then it becomes a difficult thing when you say, in a society in which work, right, societal functions versus passions, it's not really going to be a thing anymore. Like money isn't a thing, so you can be whatever you want to be. If you want to be, and also your societal function is going to be things that actually contribute to society continuing to function. So a solution I had thought of, which could be interesting, is that there could essentially be what are effectively brothels, where people go who want to just have sex. And they go and they meet up with people and they have sex. Just casual sex. No money changing hands. Like if you want to have sex, you go there, you can meet up with somebody, you find someone, you chat for a while, and then you have sex. Like, there shouldn't be money changing hands because money wouldn't exist anymore, right? So you can't really have full service sex work, prostitution, that can't really exist in a world with no money. But, so sex work can't really exist anymore in that kind of society, in the same sense that it exists now. So people could essentially, if they enjoy doing sexual things, then they can do sexual things. But it does become difficult because now a lot of sex work is very online. You get all sorts of these kind of things. So it's a difficult one. But also I have a feeling that there would probably be people who would just enjoy kind of making porn of them and their partner because they enjoy it, they find it kinky and they want to put it online. There's probably people who would just enjoy doing that for fun, but now there's no monetary incentive to do anything. So it's only people who want to do it. And that doesn't stop people from making porn. Like, porn isn't always to make money. Some people just record themselves and they post it online, even though they're not going to make money off of it. So, you get a lot of amateur stuff out there. Like, people enjoy sex, they enjoy porn. I don't think it'll be an issue. I don't think that, like sex work can't really exist as it currently exists in this kind of society, but I don't think that the idea of people who essentially do sex as part of their, enjoyment of life will disappear. So, yeah, that's sort of how I think sex work would go. Sex work should not be seen as something negative, and sex should not be seen as something negative. At some point, I probably would like to do a video series about sex. I've thought a long time about writing a book about sex. Could be interesting. I find a very interesting topic overall to talk about, and a lot of people are very prudish, and I think that is something else that needs to be taught out of, we need to have good sex education in schools, a very good, robust sex education. But I think that is it. So if you had any extra things, you think I forgot anything, I left anything out, you think anything's a glaring flaw, whatever, please, you can put it in the comments. You can argue about it. If you have questions, I'm going to put a comment and have it as a thread there so that, you can ask questions, whatever. And then I'm thinking of doing a final video because these are recorded way in advance, way in advance. So I'm going to tabulate any questions that there are. My videos don't get many views, so I might not get any questions at all. If that happens, then I won't make a final video. But it would be cool to make a final video, I think, in which I sort of chat about some of that kind of stuff. And I think that'll be it. So I am LC Lupus, and you can find me on social media at LC_Lupus if you want to see pictures of dogs, or if you want to see me rant about things, you can check out my book. It's in the description, The Cyborg Wilderness. I've explained it so many times. It's eco-fiction about a cyborg, and it's written in a stunted style. Check out the description. I liked it. I enjoyed writing it. And please do the YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe, share, do the things. Otherwise, hopefully there's one more video if I get some questions. Otherwise, this is the final video then. And ta-ta. I hope you have a good day, week, and month ahead. Ta-ta.